Every year has its serendipity chapel talk. Last year, our beloved Sue Mills stepped up to the plate, and I also remember a particularly good Kate Saban talk on faith. So while I'm wholeheartedly volunteering myself for this task, I'd like to note that I originally wanted to talk about the virtues of napping, but Mr. Hungerford quickly vetoed that idea. In early November, during the All Saints Chapel, Mr. Hungerford prefaced his chapel talk by remarking that the people who make the most profound effect on us are often the people we didn't get to choose. I would like to say that I spent the rest of that chapel listening very intently, but I'll admit that I spent it pondering the truth of that statement. For once, Mr. Hungerford had it completely right. The day that a person with a mild case of OCD realizes that her attempt to micromanage every aspect of her life is completely futile, it's a big day. I realized that the biggest things in my life, Westover, my friends, and my family, were all things that I had absolutely no say in. Secret, not very widely known fact, and I'm apologizing to admissions in advance for this, Westover wasn't my first choice. Westover also wasn't my second choice, or my third choice. I expected to get into the larger co-ed schools with ease, perhaps with a cushy financial aid package. This wasn't the case. I had applied to boarding school to escape Tallahassee, a town that I felt was too small, with not enough to do, too few people to know, and not enough restaurants. Its 200,000 residents felt impressively small. Naturally, I ended up in Middlebury's thriving metropolis of a Dunkin' Donuts, a couple of gas stations, and beloved pizza places, in a school a tenth the size of what would have been my public school in Florida, and in a town that doesn't quite make it to 6,500 people. Westover wasn't what I asked for, and yet it was what I received, and I don't think that I would have been able to achieve what I've achieved here anywhere else. I could mention internships and educational opportunities, things like Invest in Girls or the SOMSI internship, but I think that they alone aren't what have made the past 3 years so invaluable. I know that doing all of the things that I do here anywhere else would feel like drowning. But here, even though I'm bogged down with what feels like an infinite to-do list, I float. I can do what I do here because Westover as a community is kind of like a gigantic inner tube. You know, you don't drown because you're supported in every direction. So other than a few select choices I made on my freshman year roommate application concerning, you know, temperature of room and cleanliness, I had no choice in Andy at all. Andy showed up to room 98 in September of 2010 with an entourage of other tall blonde people. A blonde entourage, clocking in at 6 inches shorter than she is now with a mouth full of metal. If it weren't for Andy, I wouldn't be here giving this chapel talk, mostly because I had concocted hundreds of ways to escape that year, the most sensible of which was transferring, while the least sensible involved hitchhiking back to Florida with some friendly truckers I found. A few seniors have memories of me from freshman year, primarily because I spent that year hiding in my room. But Andy had some small amount of faith, and with that faith, Andy single-handedly convinced me to stay at Westover. And while she's never rescued me from a burning building or given me CPR, I feel indebted to her for it. Rarely do you meet a person and understand just how much they were meant to be in your life, but each day I'm reminded that if Andy hadn't been my roommate, I wouldn't still be at Westover. Each day, Andy inspires me with her dedication to the school and the infinite amount of love that she gives to those around her. If I had known all of this, I probably wouldn't have made her cry so much freshman year. If I had been given a receipt for my parents at the Bridgeport Hospital in 1996, I think I would have returned them and gotten a refund. Unfortunately, you can't return your parents. And I'm fortunate because I'm sure that they would have liked to return me during the terrible twos, and the preteen years, and maybe now. It's safe to say that the biggest influence in my life hasn't been Westover or all of you here, even though they come to a close second. The biggest influence to my character have been my parents. I have always known that I was lucky enough to have been given a dad who is just as much a best friend to me as a father. The type of guy who kept a secret stash of candy in the closet for pre-dinner snackage, gave all of my stuffed animals voices and personalities, and still loved me when I brought him the missing golf balls to proclaim proudly that I had indeed found them. Loving my mom, on the other hand, hasn't always been easy. Mothers and daughters butt heads, I know. But my mom and I brought a whole new meaning to rocky relationship. She battled with mental illness, and in turn, I battled with her. My dad traveled Monday through Thursday before I came to Westover, and growing up alone with my mom taught me how to pick those battles and attempt to understand what isn't shown at face value. Because of my mother, I see within myself strength, optimism, and patience. I see the ability to forgive, even when you don't want to, because loving someone means sometimes you just have to suck it up and move on. Each time I look at my dad, I see a man who gives and continues to give to those he loves, even when challenged to extents I believe I will never fully understand. Without my parents, and without growing up with the difficulties I faced, I firmly believe I would be in no way the person I am today. As children, we're taught all about the virtues of making the right choices. Make good choices, everyone reminds us, nagging about things like vegetables, and interactions with boys, and getting your recommended daily exercise. The importance placed on making good choices completely ignores the truth. Sometimes the choices that you think are right end up being the opposite. More often than not, however, the choices that you make become completely irrelevant because it's the choices that are made for you, the things that you have no say in, and the situations that you wish you could shy away from that alter your life the most. Some call it God, some call it karma, and some call it fate. I called it not getting my way. Whatever you call it, I firmly believe that there's something that makes sure that you're facing the right direction, something that gives you a little prod when you need it the most. I challenge you to recognize that sometimes the future you planned for you may not be the best one. Sometimes it's a school with an affinity for yellow, or a blonde, gangly girl in your dorm room your freshman year, or a set of parents that completely dissolve all ideas of the nuclear family. All things that you didn't choose, but all things that slowly but surely shape you into the person that you were always meant to be. Thank you.